Yeah, so I'll get into a little bit. What I want to touch on is, what we did this off season is, um, we had a few of either the CFL guys, a couple university guys, University of Waterloo laureate guys, and we did some videos. And all I want to do is I want to show you the biggest thing that I think for specifically linebackers and DBs, just kind of their training mentality on reaction. Like I said, so cone drills are great, ladder drills are great. All that stuff is really good for conditioning, for getting your foot speed going, for stepping in the correct spot. And I'll show you a couple because I'm still doing that. But I think the most important thing and the thing that's going to help you the most is working on reaction, working on whether it's you get your mom or your dad out there to point like this, point like that, and that's how you're breaking. Or you have a receiver out there or somebody else that's doing breaks, so you can work on that. But I think the biggest thing is reaction based because, like I said, you want to make it as game specific as possible so that once that game happens, you're ready to go and you've already trained that, right? Because you can kind of cheat the drills where, I know I'm going to backpedal 4 steps and then break to this cone. You can kind of cheat those drills. So I'll share my screen so we can see some stuff.
Perfect.
And what I'm going to start with, so these are all the videos that I have over this break of COVID. I started taking videos while I started up this training. And so I'll start with just the reaction breaks right now, just the simple. Well, what I'll do is I'll do one cone drill so we can see what it looks like. And, what we want to focus on is clean footwork, stuff like this. The biggest thing when you're planning on starting, to hop out on a field and do some sort of breaks is to have a plan, to understand what you're working on. So I know as a DB, what I'll say is, okay, today what I'm going to work on is all of my press techniques. So I'm going to set up specific drills for press, right? I'm going to focus on reaction all out of press. I'm going to focus on my eyes because that's one of the most important things. But just to have a certain specific, goal that you're going to accomplish, because if you don't have that, you're kind of going to be all over the place, right? So what I'll start with here is just some simple cone stuff. They're like 6-second clips, so I'll probably have to run them back and forth. I don't have the cowboy in my hand, so we can't do the reverse play, reverse play, reverse play. But this first one that I'm doing it's a box drill. Okay, so this is me running through, and all this box drill is focusing on zone drops with my eyes back at the quarterback. So what you'll see in this drill is we have somebody standing, acting as the quarterback, just standing completely still. And all I'm going to do is open my hips and drive deep, come back downhill with an open hip break, and just keeping my eyes on this quarterback. Okay. Eyes on the quarterback in the inside, break open. And then just at the end, we were doing different kind of breaks. This one is a zone turn, as you can see. So a zone turn being right at this point here. What I'm going to do is I'm keeping my eyes on this quarterback. Zone turn, keep your eyes on the quarterback as you're turning. Man turn, we're going to spin around. Speed turn, as some people call it, right? Keeping our eyes on the invisible man in this. But we're going to zone turn. And these are the biggest things. So, I don't finish the drill very well, right? Some might say a bad ball, but I'll say I don't finish the drill very well. But the biggest thing here is, and like anything in training, anything in football, your eyes are the most important, right? So what we can see is right here. As soon as I'm here, I want to be having my eyes focused on the quarterback in this situation, right? So here, break open. And again, whenever we're doing something where we know exactly where we're going every time, you have to focus on clean footwork. So I know once I hit this cone, I'm going to turn it open and look at the quarterback. So it's not about getting out of there or getting into there as fast as possible. It's about as little steps as possible and as clean as possible. So what I'm focused on is making as little amount of steps and planning with the correct foot, right? So usually your outside foot, and receivers really know this. If you're going to break to your left, you're going to plant hard with that right foot. If you're going to break to your right, you're going to plant hard with that left foot. This is the key thing. So in these type of drills, when you're doing the cone stuff on your own and it might only be you, make sure we're focused on clean footwork and being able to get in and out of those breaks in as little steps as possible, right? So one more time, right here, little steps, plant with the right foot, and then get out of there. And again, with those type of drills, it's good to do cone drills, like I said, getting your feet warmed up, but everything is generally reaction based. I didn't know if you want to ask any questions after that or anything that you can specifically talk about with your guys or not, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think the focus on, again, like I think for a lot of high school guys who might not have a ton of direction, they want to go and they want to work. I love the point about having a specific goal, right? So we're going to work on, it might be one skill in a variety of drills, or it might be 2 or 3 skills that link together that you use in one concept or whatever it is. But I think that that's great. Like you talked about having a plan and scheduling out your week. I think, the next step to that is obviously scheduling out your workout and having a purpose helps you make decisions about, what you're ultimately going to do. And I think that that's huge, especially for athletes that right now are trying to get some work out there by themselves. And I think your point about understanding the difference between like drilling a skill and then the next step on, okay, now we're going to use that skill and you're going to have to read something. You're going to have to read, like you said, mom or dad point left or right, or, quarterback opens up, or the receiver plants at this leg, so you're going to break this way. I think that that's something that you only need 1 or 2 people to make it work, right? Like as long as you basically have a stimulus, right, you can operate that depending on your position, right? That stimulus might be a ball carrier, that stimulus might be the quarterback, that stimulus might be the receiver. Obviously on the other side of the ball, that stimulus might be, the leverage of the defender or whatever it is. But I think building that in so that you're not just, working on that kind of like rote skill over and over and over again of break on a 45, break on a 90, break on a 45, break on a 90. I think those are my big takeaways listening to it. And, it's something that can be easily forgotten, right? You're trying to work hard and you're focusing on how hard you work in the rep, not how efficient the rep is at like translating to the skill that you're trying to develop. So I think that's the big takeaway from that for me.
Yeah. And, I know a lot of things right now is focusing on, the Instagram workouts, things that you're seeing, certain football players do, or there's certain trainers that are making their player go through, over 17 different hurdles and 14 different cones and doing all these different breaks. But the biggest thing is it's the keep it simple method, right? I won't continue the whole thing, but it's the keep it simple method. It's focus on, just to start, especially if you're by yourself, focus on, like you said, the 90 degrees, the 45 degrees, but just ramp that type of drill up. So whether it's, having somebody have a reaction, like you said, a stimulus, whether it's somebody pointing, as simple as somebody pointing, right? But what we also want to do is, if you don't have somebody, focus on those simple drills, because that's what's going to end up happening in the game a lot. But really focus in on exactly what you want to be doing. So what it kind of carries into these next videos is what I'm doing here, and I'll show you once I'm done talking about it. But I'm going to be working on my 90 direction drive. So my outs or ins as a DB, right? Or as a linebacker, it's the same thing. But all I decided to today was this was going to be off coverage. And what I was focusing on was I didn't want a ball. I just wanted to be able to drive as hard as I could. So where you lose a lot of the speed with a ball and stuff like that, because everyone wants to look back right away and catch a ball. The biggest thing is when if you're by yourself, you might not have a ball, right? So what we want to focus on is what you can control. So the biggest thing is, if I'm working on this 90 drive and I don't have anybody else with me, make it simple. We're breaking 45, we're breaking 90, we're breaking 180. But now I'm just going to focus on really getting out of my break, right? I don't have anything else. So now I'm going to just focus, get out of my break as fast as I can. So I'll pull this up. I have a 90 drive here. Again, it's going to happen fast. And so at the end here, what I'm focusing on is, as soon as I decide where I'm breaking. Now here I have somebody reaction. So on the other side of this camera, there's somebody pointing. You can see my flip-flops that are out there as my cones. And all those are mimicking right now as my receiver, because, as a defensive back, as a linebacker, you always want to look where you're breaking first, right? Especially if it's some sort of manner you're breaking on a ball or on a throw, something like that. So I have these 2 flip-flops out here. I think one's a cleat, one's a flip-flop, but I have somebody pointing. And all I'm really focusing on is really driving and not looking back for the ball. I'm just trying to make up ground, trying to get as fast as I can in and out of this break. So to start, again, what I decided here was I'm going to do 3 reps. I'm going to backpedal 1, and then I'm going to shuffle 1, and then I'm going to open hip. I don't have the open hip video, but I have a shuffle one here that I'm showing you. So I'm going to shuffle one out. So that's just instead of backpedal, some of you guys might have seen the shuffle. Linebackers use it, but they'll generally use it on 45-degree angle, right? DBs are starting to use it a little bit more to try to read quarterbacks, try to get their eyes in the backfield, to try to play the short routes first. But I'm just focused. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to do a back pedal first. I'm working on my off coverage. I'm going to do back pedal first. Then I'm going to do a shuffle. And the only thing I want to do out of every break is drive as hard as I can. So shuffle, and I'm just driving. No balls coming at all. I just want to plant my foot in the ground and get out of there as quick as possible and make up ground. Okay, so these are other simple drills you can do. And this is the exact same drill, but now, corner and post breaks. All right. So same thing, shuffle, turn. See, I move my flip-flops, move my cleats, and I'm just turning and breaking. All right. And again, on my left foot up here, shuffle first time. Second time I go through, I'll want to put my right foot up. Next time I go through, it'll be a back pedal, stuff like that. These are simple drills that you can do on your own and really get the most out of just making sure that you're driving, making sure that you're doing the correct thing by yourself. As soon as you get more people, it's easier to do reaction stuff. Just do these same drills with the point, do these same drills with the receiver breaking. It's a lot easier once you get more people, but by yourself, it's just focusing on those little details that'll help you as soon as you get into that game or having somebody in there as a stimulus, like you said. And then I guess moving on from this is, so these next videos I'm going to show you, this is working with people. So some of these guys are CFL guys, some of these guys are university guys, higher level university guys. And all I want to show you is, so now as soon as you get more people in, what you see us start to do is we start to use a lot more reaction type stuff, right? My favorite type of thing. Honestly, my favorite type of off-season training is probably getting out there and doing like a skelly or half line, because you're just going to get all of these drills encompassed into your skelly, into your half line, right? You can warm up with these type of drills. If you can get enough people, you can't really get any better than that, because reps, experience, all that kind of stuff is going to come from skelly and half line, right? I don't know for you guys if you're doing much skelly or half line in a regular normal off season, or if it's just kind of right into season and practices right away. How does that look for you guys at Cambridge?
So it's been a little bit different depending on the year. Usually we can get out on the field. Like, again, so many of our guys are multi-sport guys. There are programs that do stuff in the winter. We haven't. We've run like a skills camp like Sunday mornings if guys are interested
Right.
before. But we don't have any like mandatory before tryout stuff. We'll do meetings, which we've actually, funnily enough, done online for several years because we have players that come from all over the place. And so it's just simpler to do them online. And now, obviously, that's probably standard operating procedure for everyone in the world. But we lucked into that. We had the GoToMeeting app already downloaded. But so for us, usually, we're pretty heavy on like trying to keep the contact minimal like early on. So we do a fair amount of skelly. And then obviously train, like we don't have a ton of time preseason. Like it's such a difference. Like you think of like a university training camp. I remember planning out my first year as the head coach in Cambridge. We were allowed to get on the fields April 1st if it didn't snow. So if we didn't have snow, we could get on April 1st. And we played our first game the weekend before May 2-4. And so we had I think it was 7 weeks the way it worked out. Maybe it was the weekend after May 2-4. But I seem to remember the number of, we had 16 practices before our first game. And and so we had some time, but so we would do a little more skelly early on. And then we use skelly, like, that's a built-in part of our practice. But I think for players right now, once we are allowed to get on the field, like what we're running this summer, and hopefully we're running this summer and soon, targeting the first weekend back after the July long weekend for us, is like running basically skelly as the game that we're going to play. Can't play contact football. For the skill guys and everything building up to that. So It's definitely, I agree. Like, I think a lot of players totally understand that they got to learn the plays, but they don't like link the techniques into the plays. Like, I think that's one thing that, is a big jump from like high school to our level, to U Sports, obviously to the pros, is, your techniques make up the scheme. It's not just you're the low player. It's like, okay, well, how are you the low player? Are you going to carry a vertical, inside leverage, outside leverage? Like, where's your help? Like, the degree of difficulty goes up substantially. So I think that's where being able to get, like, as soon as we can safely, transitioning from the, the drill phase of preparation to being able to do more skelly will be huge for these guys.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing is, all these drills are great doing on your own, doing with reaction. All those are great, but if you don't translate them over to the game or to the skelly or the practice, it's it's kind of a waste of time other than just conditioning, right? And that's the biggest thing is when you're doing these, that's why it's good to have a plan, because then at least once a practice comes up or a game comes up, that, okay, when I break to this receiver, I got to turn my head and get going. I got to drive like I did in my drill that I was driving into my flip flop. You know what I mean? I have to drive that hard to this receiver to try to make up ground, because that's why I did that drill. That's why I'm trying to get better at that, because once this happens in a game, it'll be easy, right?
Absolutely.
And the biggest thing too, and the whole reason I like this reaction type stuff is because in a game, when a receiver's running at you or when a running back's coming at you, you can't, it's hard to get your balance correct, right? So to work on having your, being able to backpedal or being able to shuffle out and being able to break now multiple ways from that backpedal or shuffle, instead of just going, okay, I'm going to this cone or I'm going to this cone. It's a completely different world. When I'm backpedaling, I know I'm breaking right to that cone, and then up from that cone, I'm going to break to another cone. It's easy to do that. As soon as you're backing up and you have to start reacting on whether it's, in a game, a running back or a receiver, right, or a quarterback's look, that's when you're going to really feel that balance on your feet, right? The biggest part of football is being balanced on both feet when you can, right? And being able to break one way or the other. So I think that's why, at least personally, I like doing most of these reaction type stuff. And again, I'm now what I'll do is I'll kind of open up some more drills just so that you guys can get ideas of when I talk about this reaction type stuff. But I'll go to a simple one here. So the simple breaks that I talk about, you can never do those enough, right? So the breaking down on a curl, breaking down, on an out, on an in. And then generally there's two ways I kind of look at it, right? At least as a DB, a linebacker is a little bit different because you're going to be square to the line of scrimmage more times than not, right? Very rarely, like unless it's man and you're covering downfield or the guy's running the corner. As a linebacker, you're going to open your hips all the way with the receiver, right? He's generally coming downhill and stuff. But for me personally, as a DB, I try to do as many backpedaling breaks as I do backpedal open and then break, right? So when I say open, I mean turn your hips like you're running with a fly, or like you're running with a corner, like you're running with a post, and then being able to come back downhill, right? And the balance I'm talking on your feet is when you do open your hips and turn, to be imbalanced enough as you're running to be able to put your foot in the ground and come back downhill on curl, whether it's, a check down, whether you're coming back down on a run, whatever it is. That's kind of the big thing I try to do in any sort of these open hip drills that I'm going to show you from here on out. So I'll show you this one. This is just a triple break. So I'm working off of a quarterback and he's telling me when to break back downhill. But essentially all I'm doing is I'm breaking downhill. When he tells me to backpedal, I'm going to turn and I'm going to open. Then I'll break back downhill, and then he's going to tell me to backpedal. I'll turn and open, and then I'll break, and it'll be easier to understand once I show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this drill out with a side shuffle, just to get my feet warmed up, and then I have a quarterback I'm looking at. So I'm going to square hip break, and then you can see at this point we're working on opening the hips. And just to finish with a speed turn. You can finish at any drill at the end with either a speed turn or a zone turn, right? Looking back at the quarterback, breaking back downhill. The finish of the drill is just, get the ball in, or if I'm driving to that flip flop, whatever it is, whatever I decide, the finish of the drill. But the idea of this drill is I'm working on 3 breaks in one, essentially. So my first one is just going to be square back, breaking downhill. My next one, I'm going to open my hips, break back down. The next one after that is when I'm going to open my hips and then I'm breaking 90 or 90, right? Again, the biggest thing is anytime you're working on an open hip type break, you want to really commit your hips like you're going vertical, whether it's a DB or a linebacker, right? Because what you'll see a lot is that anybody that's played the game before and had to cover somebody knows that if you turn your hips and you're only shuffling, that guy's just going to run right by you. So the biggest thing in any type of these drills is really to open those hips up. So commit your hips vertical, commit your hips vertical. And again, that's just another way to get to a more game-like situation, because very rarely are we breaking downhill from a perfectly square position, right? We're either as a linebacker opening up on a 45, as a DB having to turn and open, right? As some sort of deep zone player having to weave, and then break. So that's why it's really good to get outside of the simple drills that I was talking about and focus on, okay, what's going to happen in the game? Oh, I'm going to have to open kind of on a 45-degree angle this way and break downhill, open on a kind of 45-degree angle this way and break down. So that's the biggest thing, is you just have to start thinking about, what do I normally do in a game? And if you have game film, that's easy. Just start watching game film and go, oh, look at that. I had to open like this and then break. There's a drill that I can go do in my backyard, right? Oh, look and see how long it took me to break downhill on the screen or swing pass. Well, there's a drill I can work on. You know what I mean? It's just drills are littered all over game film, and it's just about picking which ones you need and being able to go work on that, right? And I think that's kind of the biggest thing for especially younger players, because you can get lost in doing the same thing over and over again. But when you really look at it, all you have to do is go through any sort of game film and you'll have all the drills you need right in front of you, and you can just go create what was difficult for you, right? And work what you were good at during the game. And I think that's kind of the easiest way to look at it, right?
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And I think, you bring up, like, especially with younger players, the same, you need to repeat the skills, but that doesn't mean you need to repeat the drill. Right. And I think that's something I forget. I was at a coaching clinic, earlier on in my career, and I remember the guy saying that. And I think it was a quarterback coaching clinic, just talking about, changing up, the throwing angle, or changing up the way they rush to have a pass rusher, or, I think it was actually the guy was talking about like escaping pressure. And he just said, well, we would take our last 10 pressures, right? And we would literally simulate those last 10 pressures. It might be 3 or 4 double edge pressures. It might be, hey, the 3 tech lost right away, and on the guard lost right away, and the 3 tech got upfield, and we had to move to our left and throw. So when they were warming up, they would just build that into their warm up. Their last 10 times they got rushed, they would replay those, all throughout the week. And then the next week, just to change it up, hey, how did we get pressure this week? What footwork could you use to get out of that situation? And I always thought that was a great point, especially for younger players. You want to make sure that you're still repeating the skills, right? Like you mentioned, the weave, man turn, zone turn, breaking off those different hip angles. But it doesn't mean you need to practice, zone turns with the same drill, for 27 practices
Right.
before you change it, right? It's just, I think like anyone, even players in your situation that are, pros, you're going to get bored of doing the same drill 27 times.
Yeah. And realistically, it's not that, pros are doing anything much different than younger players. It's just pros are able to focus it into a game a little bit more because, well, we've done it more. So it's easier for us to be able to figure out what we need to work on in the off season. I think, again, you kind of, you nailed it right on the head, is that these quarterbacks were doing it in their warm up, right? A lot of these drills, especially the simpler ones, they don't need to be at full speed. Yeah, you can ramp it up to full speed, but ultimately to do anything well, I always tell everybody I'm training, okay, let's start this half speed, because if you're doing the drill or you're doing the break or you're doing the plant incorrectly, then if you just ramp it up to full speed, you're going to be doing it incorrectly at full speed, right? So you really need to focus on it. And that's one of my, when I talk about planning out my weeks, is my week is usually, and this is just my running, is some sort of sport, whether it's, basketball, whether it's whatever we can figure out, right, with my friends that I'm around. And then it's simple breaks, usually on my own, usually with one other person. And then it'll be some sort of competition stuff, a skelly, a half line with quarterbacks involved, with receivers involved. And then it'll be just a regular sprint type thing. So it could be, it could be anything like track speed. It could be anything like agility speed. But the biggest thing is you always want to tie in those simple breaks. And if you have to go as slow as possible, go as slow as possible to make them, sharp before you speed it up. Right. And if that's in warm up, then do it in warm up. And it's a great way to just keep your footwork clean, but then being able to get into whether it's a practice, warm up for practice, whether it's a warm up for skelly, whatever it could be. Right. And I think that's, one of the most important things. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just agreeing. I think it helps keep players interested, and ultimately the more engaged you are in what you're doing, and the more you have an idea of, hey, what's the plan today? Like, what am I trying to get out of today? The more effective you're going to be. So, I just totally agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess for the purpose of this, I'll just show you guys a few more drills that we kind of worked on. I'll explain them as we're going through, but now at this point, it's kind of just getting different ideas. And the reason why I'm doing these specific drills, just giving yourself some more ideas for whether you're getting into running now in the off season, whatever it could be. So right here, what we're working on here, and that's me going first, but I'll show you with, this is Scott Hutter from Laurier. He's at Edmonton now. So what we're focusing on is, remember how I said we're going to focus on either one aspect or the other. So we're all DBs here. And what we're working on right now is press. Okay, so you can see we have two different cones. What it's going to be is it's going to be a reaction off this quarterback. Okay, so he's either going to press, it's going to be like a receiver releasing inside or releasing outside. So all we're going to do is shuffle off the reaction. We'll open up, and then the quarterback has the reaction break, a 90-degree break. So he's either going to break on the in or break on the out. Okay, so you'll see here, it's going to shuffle, open, and then 90-degree break. Okay, and the biggest thing to do with these type of drills is you want to switch up, because you don't want to get into a rhythm of being able to know when somebody's going to break. So you want to be able to switch up timing, whether it's, making them run a little bit deeper, waiting on the break, making it happen a little bit faster, right? But you have to be working with somebody that's willing to be doing that and, kind of wanting to get that work in. But again, we're working on press here, shuffle, stand in front of the man, and then what we're going to do is open. So we're treating as in that receiver made that release. And then now we're only going to cover a 90-degree break. And you can see Scott here at the end of this drill. The big thing for any defensive player, and this is one of my main points for any younger defensive player, because generally what happens is when you are in high school and you're one of the better players in high school or one of the better players in city football, the easy thing to do, or you're one of the faster players, the easy thing to do is just stare at the quarterback the entire time, because you can make up ground all over the place. You can make plays just staring back at the quarterback while he's throwing. What ends up happening is if you meet somebody at the same level as you, it becomes a little bit harder. So the biggest key that I tell everybody as they're breaking is get your eyes to where you're going for at least two steps until you catch up, right? It's the getting in phase part where you're able to at least touch them, and then you look back, and you'll see Scott at the end of this, he does it. So he breaks, and you can see his head. He has like a little head turn right to the sideline. Now I'd like to see him look a little bit longer, but that right there is what ultimately will catch you up to that receiver, will catch you up when you're in that zone breaking on, if you're a linebacker as a will and you're breaking on the hook or something like that. Getting that head around to that receiver is going to give you that extra two steps. All right.
Yeah, and like you said, that's I feel like that's my main point every summer. We've got guys, and generally you're playing summer football because you're one of the better players around, and most of our guys have at least an opportunity to, if they make the right decisions as a senior varsity player, have a chance to get recruited. And that's the biggest thing I tell guys is, look, you can, you didn't do it right there and you got to pick. because you're playing high school and you're one of the dominant players. Once, even if you're a great player who's going to go on to play in the CFL, once you move, to the university level, everyone is really good. So the 2 steps that you didn't need today, you're going to need later. So start taking them now so that it becomes a habit. I think that's a great, if you're a JV DB or any cover player watching this, if you just take that one piece into your game, it makes a world of difference.
Yeah, and I've always said it, every level that you move up is always the best players of that level before. So when you're in, JV, and if you're one of the best players, well, guess what? When you get to senior, well, now you're playing all those best players that are now on the other team, right? So you're going to need that extra step. And then when you move up again, you're going to need another step. And then once you get up to the pros, wherever it is, CFL, NFL, well, you'll probably need a few more steps. So that's why the biggest thing is now is, especially in the drills, and I get it in the game, sometimes things happen, you know what I mean? And it's hard to focus in, but when you do it in the drills, when you do it in the off season and you're focused on it, that's why having a plan is great, because when you're focused on it, then as soon as you get to a game, it's just going to be habit, right? 21 to 30 days to make or break a habit. So if you're working on the off season, you got a head start once you hit the season, right? And I don't know how much time you got left, but I'll give a couple small little drills for
a couple more is great. Like a couple more is great. Don't worry about time too much. If we're a little short, that's fine. If we're a little long, that's fine too.
All righty. So right here, again, same day. This is Scott. So what we're going to be working on here is we're going to work on a little bit of off coverage. So exact same drill we were working on with the press, but now all we're doing is we're starting doing a backing up. Okay, so now what we're going to do is he's going to back pedal. All right, and again, the back pedal, the shuffle, that'll be, whatever, at least for me, you do whatever you're comfortable with. Some coaches will want you to do a specific way, but you might as well work on both the techniques anyway. But you'll see we'll open up a hip, and the only difference on this one is now we're breaking downhill. So instead of the 90-degree break, we're going to break downhill. So Scott, you can see he's got his eyes on me. We're going to just get into our open hip. So we've already predetermined he's going to go over his right shoulder. And now all he's doing is as soon as that quarterback makes a look one way or the other, he's going to break downhill. So you can see Scott here. Again, same thing I'm telling everybody. And you can see, so Scott's in the CFL. He's in his second year in the CFL hopefully when it goes this year. But even Scott has to work on getting his eyes to that receiver, right? And you can see he is working on it, but ultimately make this a very good rep is he should be driving hard to this receiver, right? You'll see it peaks and then gets a look back. But again, the longer you can get your eyes on that receiver and make up ground, the better. But ultimately, working from open hip, breaking downhill, pretty good finish. All right, and then this is one of actually, I'll go to this one first. So this is ramping it up a little bit. So everything you've seen so far is off of reaction, right? Now this is when we're going to be working on a partner. So again, the exact same drill. And like we said, you can do the same type of footworks, just different ways in different drills, just masked differently, right? So we can see here is we're going to be working on the exact same thing, but now we're just working on it with a receiver. All right, I messed up the loading. So now take him back to that press drill, right? We're going to open up our hips. We're going to stay in front of them, open up our hips. And ultimately you can see in this, where I froze it here, is Scott has his hips open and his eyes are down on my hips. And now the same drill applies, just the same thing we were doing with the quarterback, where he's going to break 90 in or he's going to break 90 out on an in or an out. But now the receiver is going to run this for him. So what you can see is at this point, as a receiver, I have one way or the other way to go. And all Scott's going to be doing is reacting off this. All right. So you can see here, because we're in a man situation, this is why we're man turning. This is why we're man turning, speed turning around on this. But you can see Scott, he gets himself into an open position, breaks off my reaction. And again, you don't need a ton from the guy that's showing you a rep. All he needs to do is give you that quick reaction and you can finish the drill. Scott has his eyes in a good place, right on my hips, right? Breaks, opens, finishes the drill. So again, what I've been showing you is ultimately the same drill over and over and over again. Just now it's, by yourself, and then it's with somebody holding the ball, and then it's with a receiver breaking, right? And again, what you can see is as we move on and as you get used to this, the one with the receiver, when it's this close, is going to be the sloppiest, right? Because you're reacting off receiver, it's happening very fast. But if we keep working on it in those simpler drills, right, then we know what the footwork should be by the time we get up to the receiver. And then ultimately, this will be the hardest one to get used to. And then the harder one out of this is once you're in a game, right? But if we're working on those simple steps for the beginning, as we move up, it's going to be easier and easier and easier, right, to be able to make these type of plays. All right. One more, and this is a good one for linebackers. I've been talking a lot about DB, so linebackers wake up here. This is perfect for any sort of zone where we're looking at the line, we're looking at the quarterback, we're on his break, and it's getting your eyes around to, perfect spot for a linebacker. Let's say we're talking with, a Will, and you have a check down over the ball and a hook by number 2 weak, right? And we're in some version of cut, and it's being able to break from one to the other. All right, we're going to get back to our landmark, back to where we got to go, and then we're on the quarterback's shoulders and on his eyes. And what we can see here is we have the quarterback. He has a two-way go. So you can see when the drill sets up, we have both our players right on the cones, right? And the quarterback is a two-way go. He can look to the left, he can look to the right. The idea of the two guys out on the cones is as soon as that quarterback takes that look, we got to turn our heads. One guy turns into the receiver, the other guy turns into the defender, and that defender has to drive to that receiver as fast as he can, right? So this is a simple zone drill that you can get in with reaction. You can get it if you put another person on the other side and we're predetermining where we're going, but this is a simple one. So you see the quarterback open and we're driving. Obviously we're throwing to the DB here anyway, but you can see this is Malcolm Thompson from Laurier, and he does a very good job at as soon as our quarterback turns his shoulders, you can see his head snap right away. Boom. Because he knows he has to make up ground. And this is the key thing. You can turn your head, get your eyes to where you're going, but if we're in a good spot, we can look back and make a play on that ball. So this is just getting used to that for a drill version of it. All right, and then finally a fun one for me that I do with a lot of the guys, just kind of more of a conditioning drill. And again, going back to that balance in your back pedal or in your shuffle, this is a really good reaction break one and ultimately a fun one at the end of it. So what we're doing is, you'll see I'm going to back pedal throughout this entire thing, and all I'm doing is breaking on these cones. Wherever this coach is going to throw the cones, I'm breaking downhill again to that cone and then starting in my back pedal again. All righty, we'll try it again. And this is good for just getting reaction, keeping balance as you're backpedaling. Again, I don't like it because we know we're breaking downhill every time. I would prefer reaction in terms of having to go one way or the other, because I can kind of cheat it and go very slow backwards, right? But again, this is really good for getting your footwork correct, right? Being able to back up, keep that weight over top of your toes so that as soon as that cone goes down, we're breaking forward, right? And ultimately, those are just some ideas for you to kind of take into the off season, and once you start running again, to be able to put these into your practice plan. And again, just have a plan when you go out. Make sure that you know what you're planning on doing, you know what you need to work on, and then again, you can do the same thing, just looking a little bit different, adding in different reactions, adding in different stimulus, just like you said.